Hey everyone, I'm Tammy Sollenberger, the author of The One Inside 30 Days to Your Authentic Self. This podcast is for anyone curious about who they are, the different parts of themselves, and for those who want to connect with their true self. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Hey everyone. On today's episode, I chat with Tara Vogel. Tara is a Level One trained IFS practitioner and a certified professional astrologer and coach who is passionate about helping people stay connected to themselves and their soul's path via the cosmos. I found this conversation to be fascinating and so interesting and just very validating, which I say several times. So you might notice some parts of you that come up. You might notice some skeptical parts, or you might notice some parts that want to know more. And so I just encourage you to allow all the parts that are up just to be there and be with them. And of course, all parts are welcome. Tara mentions Derek Scott. You probably know who Derek Scott is, but if not, Derek has been on the podcast several times. He leads the IFS Counseling Association and lots of IFS trainings. You can find his information on the show notes. Also, she mentioned Seth Copald. Seth also has been on the podcast several times. He leads a free self-led parenting question and answer session the first Friday of the month on Facebook. There's a Facebook self-led parenting page, and you can find that on the show notes. And obviously, follow Tara on Instagram, Luminary Parenting, and her website, luminaryparenting.com. Enjoy. All right, well, let's just start with a question that I always start with. Can you let everyone know where you are in the world and what you would see if you look out your nearest window?
I am in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia area. And it's interesting because I have this really sweet office. I live in a church that's been flipped and turned into a house. So that window over there, which would be normally a regular window, is a stained glass window. So as beautiful as it is, I can't see out that window. And my nervous system really needs to check in with real windows regularly because I can feel a little bit, here I'm on Zoom all day. I do astrology readings online. I teach online. I have an online business. So I have my field of vision is very narrow. So I have to really take good care of myself and go out and look at our backyard very often. So yeah, but I do have a beautiful stained glass window in my office.
It's so funny. I never really thought about that, but right, you have a stained glass window, but those are impossible to see out of.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. It's just that my nervous system needs to actually see the trees and the skyline and the clouds.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah. So I found out about you because you did a class with Derek Scott a year or two. I've lost track of all kinds of time. You did a master class on astrology and parts. I'm not sure if you kind of what you named it, but I thought it was fascinating and I listened to it. And I am just super interested in what you do. I follow you on Instagram. And I've always wanted to have you on my podcast after you did the master class. So I'm super excited that we finally got together and got to do this. So
yeah, it was just synchronicity because, by the way, that class, Derek named that class and it was called Charts and Parts. So because we all have a natal chart, which is, I'll talk about that, in a little bit, but, this really shows it's another way of knowing our parts. So I love the title. I was like, oh, let's use it. I love it. And I just read your book. And so when I was reading the book, and then of course I followed you on Instagram because that's what people do. I thought, oh my God, she has a podcast. And of course I've listened to your podcast too, which is how I found out about the book. I'm like, I just have to be on there. Yeah, let's make that happen. And then I reached out and then, yep, it happened.
I love it. I love that. I love the timing of it because I remember when you did that with Derek. I remember wanting, but who knows what was going on in my life that I kind of couldn't. Sometimes it takes me kind of a year to get things together. So, yes, I'm excited about the timing of this too. So, tell me what you just said. Tell me about natal charts and what is a natal chart, and let's just go with sort of basics.
Yeah. So we all have a natal chart, and it's basically our birth chart or natal chart or astrology chart. You can use them interchangeably, is a flattened out map of where all the planets were on the day, time, and place you were born. And that I am in my other life before kids, I was an elementary school teacher. So I like to refer to that as your soul's curriculum. You know, like when we all come sliding down here over the Rainbow Bridge, we have this natal chart or this map of the sky where the planets were when we took our first breath. This is what I'm going to do in this lifetime. This is who I'm going to be. These are the things I'm going to feel. This is the way I'm going to think. You know, it's just, there's a divine plan to it. And so it's like our soul's lesson plan. And understanding that can help you. It's just another avenue, Tammy, to understanding your parts. So, and if you the listeners want to, because we're going to talk about that, you can pause right now and you can go to astro.com and you just enter your birth information. You need to know where you were born, what time you were born, and you can pull up your natal chart for free. And so I encourage you to do that so you can kind of follow along with us as we go.
I love that. So this is probably I'm going to probably ask a lot of stupid questions. But so here's the first stupid question. Why does it matter, like what was happening in the planets and the moon when I was born? When and where I was born? Like, why does that matter?
Right, that is a good question because the time of day and the place, you know, where you're born, right, the sky looks differently depending. Astrology is all about our view of the sky from where we are in the earth. So depending on what time of day, right, the sky looks very different now. Like if we're standing here in Eastern, I'm in Eastern Pennsylvania, as opposed to somebody in Europe right now or, you know, in Asia. So it's all about what it looked like at that time when we took our first breath. So, yeah.
And so so then why is it, why is it important what the sky looked like when I took my first breath? Like, what does that have to do? Like, why is that my soul's curriculum? The sky looked that way when I took my first breath.
Yeah. I mean, I like to really use the visual as when, you know, a baby is coming through the birth canal or coming out of the mother. It's that first breath that we take. It's like the imprint of who we are in this lifetime. And so, and that informs our journey, you know, what we're up to in this lifetime as a soul. It's I have this quote because I wanted to share it. It's by Carl Jung. It says, we are all born at a given moment and a given place, and like vintage years, we have the qualities of the year and the season which we are born. So we all know our sun sign, right? We all know, right? You're a Sagittarius sun at the very end of Sagittarius, and we have the qualities of that season. But we also, the moon was also in a sign and Mercury was also in a sign. You know, we know a lot about sun sign astrology, but there's so much more, and it's such an avenue for really understanding yourself in this lifetime.
Okay, so most people will be familiar with what's called their sun sign. Like I'm a Sagittarius, that's the sun sign. But there are other signs. So we're not just sun sign. There's the moon
Yeah.
sign. And so, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is what I went through in the class with Derek, is that I really focused on the moon sign because the moon changes signs every 2.5-ish days. Moon moves at different speeds, but the moon really is, it's like a little hack as to how to be a good parent to yourself. And so how to cultivate self energy. And so no understanding your moon sign, because your moon shows your emotions. It shows the quality of your emotional body. It also shows the way it can point to how your childhood was or your perception of your mom. So it, you know, there's a lot of nurturing energy, like how you like to be nurtured, right? So yeah, it's like such a good, this is how you're wired, Tammy, to take care of yourself in this lifetime. These are the things you need. This is the flavor of your emotions, you know? So yeah, the moon is our emotional memory. And our sun is just who we are. It's like our ego, our personality, you know, it's the part of us that decides what it's going to do each day when it gets out of bed. And so, yeah, and then we also have the rising sign. This is such a astrology. I mean, it could be, I think that was a 3-hour masterclass I did with Derek, but was really focused on the moon because it can really show, you know, our needs and how to meet them.
And so, could someone be, so when you find out your moon, so your natal chart is going to tell you all this information, but so could someone be like a Sagittarius sun sign, and then a different type moon sign?
Oh, absolutely. And there are 12 different choices. I have your natal chart in front of me. So, you're a Sagittarius sun, but when you took your first breath, Tammy, the moon was in Scorpio. So your Sagittarius you're such a teacher, by the way. You're such a teacher and such a healer in that I see in your chart. It's hard for me not to look at the whole chart and just give you a little mini reading. But your moon in Scorpio really, that's where I want to dive into the psyche. Like there's somebody who doesn't want to just stay on the surface with things. Like you're very curious, or there's a part of you that's very curious, that is a teacher, that's definitely a learner as well. You like to learn and teach and learn and teach. But then there's also somebody that your emotional body is very deep, and you need to be met with those that intensity. Like you like to really get to the bottom of things, like what's really going on. This is such a like a psychotherapist vibe. But it feels good to you to do that deep dive.
Mm. Yeah, gosh, as you say that, I'm just like, wow, it just feels really validating, and I feel myself like smiling, and like, I'm guessing that's what people experience when you read their charts. Like, I'm guessing it just feels so validating for their systems. It's almost like you're seeing my parts. Like you're like, I'm seeing and
Yeah.
naming parts of me.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. People leave with, oh my gosh, how could you have described me better than my own mother could have, just by where the planets were in the sky when I was born? Because that is me, I must be doing something right. I must not be all wrong, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, and there's your natal chart, and that doesn't change, but it is intended to grow and develop over time. And the way it grows, we grow and develop over time in the astrological lens is, the planets in the sky are always moving, and they touch in with those sensitive points that are us. And then it says, if we're having a Saturn transit, it says buckle down and do the work and learn the lessons, but if it's a Jupiter transit, it's like get bigger. Where else can you say yes in your life, And so it can, we also talk about in a session like what's happening now and how you can flow with it.
Is that when they say like Mercury rising, or like Scorpio, like Libra season? Like what does all that stuff mean? Like oh, it's Libra season, or like I
Yeah.
follow this woman on Instagram, and she's always like, oh, it's this season. And I'm like, I have no idea what that means. But then she'll sort of say like, has everyone been a wreck this week? And I'm like, yeah, I've been a complete wreck this week. And then you're like, oh, everyone else has been a wreck this week. And then she explains why. And I never really understand what it means, but it feels so validating. Like, oh, everyone else has been a wreck this week. Good. Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah. And that has to do with not so much where the planets were when you were born, but what's happening now in the sky, because the quote, as above, so below. We are so connected. Like in ancient times, when we needed answers, we looked up, and that helped us look within. So there's such a connection. We have certainly lost that connection because we don't live outside anymore. We live indoors, and we have we're in front of screens now. But that's why it can feel really good because I do that also. My niche is astrology and parenting. Um, so I report every day what's happening with the moon, because if you remember what I said, the moon is it's our kids are really connected to the moon. We were really connected to the moon when we were children, and we still are. It's just, the kids they're just more from the other side and unconditional love, and they're just more in their bodies in the moment. And so if we understand that today is a Capricorn moon as we're recording that, and we can be all in the mood, doesn't matter where you live on the planet, everyone, the moon is in Capricorn for everyone. And it can be the day to get a lot of work done and to just do the hard thing and stop complaining, but we can be in the mood to complain if the moon is in Capricorn. So it can be really validating to people. Like, I do feel that way. Oh, wow. I'm probably more connected than I think I am. And so that connection to the sky it's like magic, Tammy, because then we can also be connected to our parts, right? And then there's just this beautiful little, it's like fairy dust, I think, sprinkled on, like it's just magic. Like I start to know myself better and I trust myself. And ultimately, I trust something higher, Dick would call this self, or my higher self, or I trust the planets, as we would say in astrology, to guide me. I can get really caught up with my parts and they can be talking to me, but it's really like letting the self lead. So yeah.
I love that. Okay, so before we talk about self, I want to talk about this idea that if I know, it's almost like a part of me can anticipate how my kid's going to be because of like how my kid's going to be because of the moon, and maybe how my kids' parts are going to show up, then I can kind of anticipate that.
Yeah, it's like moon of the day equals mood of the day. And it's the music that's playing in the background that we don't realize. It's like, the moon represents our subconscious. So it's a lot of understanding the moon in your natal chart can understand the things that you were told when you were young, kind of like the programming you got when you were younger, the emotional climate of your house or your home, that we don't even realize it. We don't even know it. So the moon of the day can point to what everybody's mood is going to be. So today can be a little grouchy. The moon doesn't really love to be in Capricorn because Capricorn is a sign that likes to work and the moon likes to feel.
So then could you say that my exiles potentially are not that they're created within my moon, but somehow my exiles are more connected to the moon something.
Yes, absolutely. So, if you really want to understand your psyche or, those parts of us that weren't allowed, or the parts of us that hold energy, they're like trailheads for us. Really learning about your moon can be helpful, more so than your sun sign. And unfortunately, everybody knows their sun, and it's not, from a therapeutical perspective or a psychological perspective, the moon is like where the treasures are, and
Yeah.
so so really understanding that, and you can only know where your moon was because the moon moves so quickly if you go to astro.com. And so for those of you who hopefully have already done it by now, you can just look at, there's a little box that says, moon in Scorpio. And you can look up on some websites like Cafe Astrology or astro.com, natal moon in Scorpio, and then read about yourself. And you're like, oh my gosh, yeah. I, yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm just, a Scorpio moon. I'm thinking about your moon sign again, Tammy. I'm just so intense. Like people don't always want to dive in the deep waters, but that's like what I love. It feels so good, and as talkative as you are and inquisitive, your moon sign in Scorpio definitely needs its time alone. Like it needs to, everybody go leave me alone so I can go inside and see what's going on. You know, um, yeah. So it can be really insightful when you learn about your moon signs.
I wonder, so as you're saying that, I'm noticing two things happening inside of me. One is that validation, but another is like I'm noticing my manager. So I'm noticing the manager that's like that that I don't know, maybe sort of the part of me that wants to be intense and wants to have those conversations. And then I'm noticing the other part of me, and I've noticed this weekend after last week was super intense for me. And then this weekend I was like, things got canceled. Like it was so weird. I had so many things get canceled, and it was like opened up space and it allowed my kind of be by myself, relax, be quiet, be silent, which I so needed. And
Yeah.
so I feel like you're speaking for that, for those two really big parts of me, ones that like work and are very busy, and then ones that are like, nope, we're done.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah. That is the nature of a Scorpio moon. Scorpio moon likes to go all in or I'm all done, you know? And so, but either way, it's this, it's very poignant. Like here I am, I'm fully in, or I'm not in at all. And to understand that about yourself, because your moon can hold a lot of emotional baggage. It can be the place where we're most tender, so we can get hurt there. So it can also show what, when we were young, like the parts of us that weren't allowed. So it's like, but that's actually who I am. So you can see how that can feel just so comforting to know, like, there is nothing wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think it would really relax the critics. That was the other thing I was thinking is if you were reading people's charts or if they were reading their charts online, like you're suggesting, that I wonder how much of their critics would relax a little bit, like, oh, like this is why I am how I am, or
Yeah.
this, and so I don't have to be like, oh, why did I need to relax this weekend? Or why did I need to be like, why at a certain time of night? I'm like, I'm done. Everyone stop talking to me. I've said that to my son. Okay, I'm done. I'm done parenting. I'm done. Go to
Yeah.
bed. I'm done parenting today.
Yep.
But sort of it really relaxes parts of me that will criticize me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many different avenues. I think, is it a human design that you're familiar with? Is that right? Or no?
Enneagram.
Enneagram. Okay. It's just another avenue into understanding the psyche. So, when everyone is looking at their natal chart, when you look at the planets are just parts of us. We all have these parts. When we were the sky had a Mercury in it, it had a moon, it had a sun, it had a Saturn. They were all somewhere in a sign of the zodiac in the sky. So these are universal to us all. And so the planets are just parts of us. And the way those parts behave is shown by what time, like what season or what zodiac sign, the planets were in. And then we can even take it further, is what house is it in? And that's the area of life where these parts will show up. And so knowing the sign of your moon and the house of your moon can be really insightful to just understanding yourself and your childhood too, and yeah. So, this is really where I love to go as well, is the sun is our divine masculine luminary and the moon is our divine feminine luminary. And I teach a course for other astrologers, but next in the 2023, I'll launch a course for parents. They also show our perception of our parents, and so your Sagittarius sun, where it is, this is the things that we talk about, because and your Scorpio moon, like you really needed a strong relationship with your mom that was very secure, and it could have felt like you had to be like a little bit more responsible than was comfortable for you when you were young. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so also understanding, like, oh wait, yeah, I did see my mom that way, or I did see my dad that way, and that was in place when I first took my first breath, so my childhood must not have been wrong either. Right. And so it's like
Mhm.
there's something bigger going on here that the ancients understood. And it's part of my mission to help us to be more connected to that language, that ancient art or science,
Mhm. Mhm. So two thoughts. One is, and tell me if this is too much for what we have time for today. Planets as parts. So I want to talk about planets as parts if we have time for that. And then I want to talk about the moon can help you cultivate self.
Yeah. So it's like understanding your needs, like, understanding your parts can just it can help cultivate the eight C's. Like we can have a lot of compassion, or even creativity, because once we get ourselves, we also know our gifts. Like, oh, I've been like locking that part in the basement and not really, but it's, oh my gosh, that's who I am. And then it gets to come out and be creative. And so yeah, we can, knowing our parts help cultivate that. And, there's right there is the avenue to self being more present. Um, it's like if I had, well, let's see, if I had a natal chart, I'd be showing you right now. And there's, if you have printed out your natal chart, or, you can pull it up on apps right now. There's so many different apps. But it's like there's a circle in the middle of the natal chart, and that's just us on Earth in relationship with all our parts. But here we are on Earth, sky above, earth below, and here is myself in the middle observing my parts. I
Mhm.
do think that way. That's right. I am really critical about myself. I always think I could be doing better. And I really do love to teach. And I get so excited about information, and sometimes I feel overwhelmed, And so it's a way to be in relationship, knowing the planet, where the planets were, and really like, just learning some basic astrology can help you, yeah, understand yourself. Did
I
that
love
answer your question?
it did. It did. And I love the way you said that because I thought, yeah, just um, as you naturally learn about your parts, then that's unblending you from your parts. And so
Yes.
then there's more space for your self energy, and there's more space for you to be there to validate and befriend the parts of you. So I love
Yes.
that. I love that.
Yeah. And it's a great way to unblend. Thanks for bringing that piece in. Yeah, can be really insightful. And what I also love to do, Tammy, I love to do readings for moms, right? Because we can lose ourselves in parenting a little bit. We can get off track because there's someone that we birthed into the world or brought into the world that we love more than we ever thought we could humanly possibly love another person. And so we can just want to do the best we can for them, and then we lose ourselves. So I love doing readings for moms, but I also love doing readings for moms about their child's natal chart, just because it can be a really, right. I have three different kids. Three kids with three different natal charts. And when I look at their moon, not only do I see their perception of me, but it's like their unique prescription for how they really love to be nurtured. And that can be super helpful. Um, it's like the best parenting hack, I think, around. And it can help you just see them for who they are, and not have like, how this works, like our parts from the past that weren't allowed, we project them onto our kids, and we're like, no, you can't be fiery or what, because
Hmm.
that's a bad thing, and we don't realize we're doing it, right? Because it's just in our programming. But again, really helpful for picking out our parts and getting perspective into, our own child.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because then I'm not parenting him, like I'm not parenting my son the way either I needed. So a part isn't parenting him the way I needed to be parented, or um, yeah, our part, yeah, there's all kinds of parts that could be parenting him.
Right.
Actually. Yeah, instead
Yeah.
of parenting him from sort of what he is from more self energy, which is going to be more curious and more compassionate, more curious about what he needs. And I always parent better when I'm a little unblended, and then I can be more curious about his parts and whatever
Mhm.
parts are showing up for him. I always parent better when I'm when I'm unblended.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And so this is just like another tool of, again, I want to do the mom first. So she really gets herself, and, here's me and my parts. And then I love to do readings for parents about their kids' natal charts.
Do you feel like you have to work with the mom's part sometimes that are like, no, well, it's more important for me to know their chart and not my own. Like, do you have to
Yeah.
work with that part of parents sometimes?
Sure, absolutely. Because the problem is always out there. It's just I just need them to do this and they won't do this, and
Yeah.
it's really hard for me. And so, and I totally, absolutely will just do, because, astrology readings these days aren't cheap. So, if a parent just wants their kid's chart to be read, I will absolutely do that, because I can tell about like which parts were not allowed when that parent was young. You know, it's because it's what they have issues with in their child. So it's just a matter, you know, I mean, I think that what I do is IFS formed astrology. You know, I'm still doing astrology. That's what my sessions look like, but I'm bringing in this IFS perspective and just using, you know, I am trained in level one. So, and you know, I'm just like such a big fan of everything that Dick does. So it's, even though I've only done level one, I just feel like I've had so much more. So yeah, bringing that perspective to whatever, and I see it in the chart also, it can be helpful to understand your child's perception of you. Because, you know, like I said, I have three different kids, and that we also work with in a session. You know, if you have a moon in Virgo, your child is going to hear your criticisms more. You know, there is going to be a way, because Virgo likes to fix. So you know, your child can hear what you say, dear mama, as, oh, something's wrong and she needs me to be a certain way and to be fixed. And so that can be helpful for the mom to know, to be more conscious and aware of the kind of words that she speaks to her child.
Mm, mm.
So yeah, and like I said, in 2023, I'll just, because I can't do all the sessions, like I have to start teaching more. And I'm going to be doing a class for parents, you know, how to look at your kids' natal charts and use it as a parenting tool. I mean, I'm definitely not, you know, ancient astrology. We don't do that anymore. Predictive astrology, that's still done, but it's done through a psychological modern perspective, you know.
Yeah, well, I love what you're saying is what I'm hearing is I had this conversation with an IFS consultation client that I have. The idea that like, okay, so I want my child to listen. Let's say they're not listening, I want them to listen. And so we can work on sort of getting to know them and sort of behavior strategies on getting a kid to listen. Or I can do something that actually feels sort of counterproductive of like working on my own parts or what happens for me when they don't listen or how I communicate or like all those parts of me, which feels like I think initially feels like sort of a waste of time or
Yeah.
not important, but it is actually more important than
Yeah.
I want him to be fixed out here. I want this to be fixed. But if first worked on my own parts, and even what you're saying, like his perception of me, that's all my parts. Um, and
Yeah,
then that's
right.
actually going to get me what I what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. And our kids come with this, I mean, they're like our healers, and because they show us the parts of us that are still locked in the basement and we're not okay with. So when we have to learn to be in relationship with, not, it's, yeah, not learning a strategy of how to manage the behavior, but they're inviting you to be in relationship with the part of you that you're not comfortable with. That's healing. And when mom heals her parts, our kids win. It's like the best parenting thing. It's no, you know, you can't learn those techniques. I mean, sure, there can be helpful kinds of little things, you know, and we talk about that in sessions, you know, just mirroring back and reflecting back what you see. Like, you really have strong feelings about going to bed right now. You know, it just,
Yeah.
that can be so healing. And that's, you know, I think that's
Yeah.
what an astrologer does too, is they just mirror, like you said earlier, they just mirror back who you are. And it's like, oh, yeah, that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, I do have strong feelings about what happens, right? Is their parts and trigger our parts, right? So they have strong feelings about going to bed, and I have strong feelings about you going to bed. So,
Yeah. And you know, just, you know, like I understand what you're saying, is that there is a point. My daughter, my youngest, she just turned 10, she has a lot of, her sun, moon, and rising are in fire and air signs. So there's a lot of outgoing. Fire and air is masculine or the yang energy, and earth and water is the yin or the receptive energy, the female energy. So I'm really water and earth in my sun, moon, and rising. And but she's fire and air. So there's a time at night that I'm I'm done. And she's not. And so the older she gets, the more we can be in conversation because I understand it makes sense. Like there's nothing wrong with what she's doing. She's just ramped up. She's usually ramped up, and so it just puts it's again, another way of knowing yourself, and knowing your needs and
Mm.
things like that. Yeah. Seth has really great IFS and parenting things there, and I always try to join his groups when I'm able, but yeah, lots of good stuff there in IFS informed parenting.
What I hear you saying is that there is something about those things are all wonderful, but not but and there is something about really connecting to what's happening in the moon and in the planets and in the sun. I don't know if I can say it that way. There's something very natural, organic about what's happening. Like it's already happening. Like so we're sort of calling forth or sort of saying what's already happening um, behind the scenes. So even though we do all those other things that it's really good parenting wise, but being able to be aware of what's happening in the sky is saying, here's what's already happening right now. Like, here's what is.
Yeah, it's like, the moon when you were born. So for it's a Scorpio moon. That's the emotional tone of your whole life. So that's who you are. And then the moon every 2.5 days is changing in the sky. And then that also is like the background music that's playing for everyone. So I think knowing both, this is how I'm wired. I need my alone time. And when I'm done, I'm done. And intimate Scorpio moon, intimacy is important. Um, that talking about like what really matters. Definitely feeling you, Tammy, can feel intensely. And sometimes it can be a little bit too, like, even for you, it's like, gosh, so the moon doesn't actually love to be in Scorpio. Sometimes it can mean that there was some emotionally hard things when you were growing up. Like what was the hard thing when you were growing up? You had to be responsible too, that because that's also in your chart. Um, yeah.
Yeah. When you say that, what feels like, do you want me to answer that question?
Sure. Yeah, because my point is that there was something because you have a Scorpio moon that there was like emotionally there was something that was challenging for you and the emotions really wanted to come through, but maybe you had to just suck it up and be responsible and they weren't honored. And so, but there's this for you, there's no accident that you are and you do what you do because you have such a signature of I heal others, I help others heal, but it's from the own content of my childhood, that I learn about that.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And that feels very authentic. It feels like you're saying something that feels really true and really authentic. I have a question about the moon again, about what you just said about so if my moon's in Scorpio and then the moon is changing every 2.5 days, does it matter? Are those two different things or are they
Absolutely.
okay.
Two different things. It's like the mood of you in this lifetime is very deep and scorpionic. And, I need, I want to be intimate with people, but then I also need them to leave me alone. Um, and
That is
there's,
so true.
I want to connect with people deeply, but then go home because then I need to be all by myself. Um, and then there's the moon of
Oh,
the
so
day,
funny.
which we're all experiencing. It's like the weather of the day, the cosmic weather of the day, the mood of the day. That's what's happening with the moon in the sky. So they're two different things. Knowing both are really good hacks to understanding your mood of your lifetime and then also the current mood. Like, yeah, everyone's complaining today because the moon is in Capricorn, or tomorrow when it's in Aquarius, it's like it's more of a verbal day. Like we feel like making the play dates or talking to our bestie. It's because it's just the mood that we're in. So it's both. They're two different things though.
Right, that's super helpful. If the moon is in the sign, that's the temperature,
Yeah.
or the natal moon is
The temperature of you, a person.
Okay.
in this lifetime.
And the if the moon is in this sign, is that this is a really stupid question. Is that part of the like 30-day cycle of like full moon, half moon? Is that the
Yeah,
same thing or is that a different thing?
it's absolutely. And I hear, Tammy, you're a Virgo rising. So there's a really an inner critic that's just so loud. It's just like because you like to get things right, right? So you want to understand exactly what's going on. I totally hear that. Um, the moon in the sky that we're talking about, the moon in the sky visits each zodiac sign every 29 days, and that's a whole moon cycle. And the phases of the moon are also part of like what I talk about every day on Instagram. And the phase of the moon that you were born under, because we're born when the moon is in a sign, and also it was a phase. So when you were born, Tammy, you were in the waning crescent phase. So you were like, it was almost the end of the moon cycle. And when you would look up, you would see this crescent in the sky. And that's also a reason why you need your alone time, because when you're alone, you can also have the opportunity to cultivate that wisdom. Like you're someone that you as you move through your years, you get wiser. And because you're Sagittarius sun, you're such a teacher. You're here to be teaching that and sharing this wisdom. And you need your time alone to be able to restore yourself, but you also need your time to like cultivate that wisdom, because like the world's waiting for it. It's what you signed up for. So yeah, the moon phase is equally as important, and I also go over that with parents or about themselves or what I do each day. So yeah, I mean, why don't we just go through like when the moon, because everybody had the app where, or you could follow me on Instagram because I just talk about it every day. So, when the moon in the sky is in Aries, which is a fire sign, our mood or our emotional temperament can be fiery and quick. Like we want it now. We want to be first. This is the time where the kids will be like, she got it first. I wanted it first. Why? Or our kids are fighting more, or we have less patience and we snap at our dear beloved. Like it's just the mood of the day. We're all snappy when the moon is in Aries. And then 2.5 days later it moves into Taurus, where it's like the moon loves to be in Taurus, where it's it can feel really good to pleasure and all those sensual things about our body, and our food can taste so good and we can be thinking about money. Also, I invite people as I go through the zodiac, you can also think like, oh, but wait, I have a Taurus moon in my natal chart. So, oh, that means in order to feel good, or what I really need is I need security and safety. And I love touch. Oh my God, that's why I love massages so much. You know, that's why my kid who has an Aries moon just like has tons of energy and loves to I don't even know where they get all their energy. So it can be insightful, as I go through the zodiac, to not only listen like, oh, that's interesting for the mood of the day, but also like, it's your mood of your lifetime. So so then it goes into Gemini. And so the moon in Gemini, we're in the mood to talk, and we love to multitask when the moon is in Gemini. There's so many things that captivate our curiosity. And we can definitely feel a little scattered when the moon is in Gemini. And then 2.5 days later, about 2.5 days later, it moves into Cancer. And then we can feel more emotional, and we can, Cancer is all about the home and mama, and so it can be like our kids need us more because we're mama when the moon is in Cancer. And it's like, oh, but I just need a mama for myself. Can you give me some space? But it's like when you can understand, oh, it's just a Cancer moon. That makes sense that they need me more, and nothing is wrong. It just adds validation to, and it has you, Tammy, understand like it's exactly how they are today. And I must be more connected to the sky than I think, right? It can just be very validating. Is this helpful that I'm going through all that? Okay.
Very. It's fascinating and helpful, and I feel like you're explaining it in a way that I've never understood it before. So thank you so much. It's super interesting.
Okay, awesome. So after it leaves Cancer, it goes into Leo, and that's when it's a really good time to like do fun things and playful things. And we want to be seen, and your kids can be like, hey mom, look at me, no wait, look at me, it's like we want people to see us. And then we can also feel a little bit insecure, like, oh my god, everyone's looking at me. But it's like Leo is really here to do their thing. And so acknowledging each other can feel really good, or that, acknowledging of the self. And then it moves into Virgo after that, which, when the moon is in Virgo, we can feel like cleaning our whole house. I always say, just wait till the moon moves into Virgo to do all the organizing or the cleaning, because you'll be in the mood and then it'll feel like, that was great. That felt awesome. So, um, and if your natal moon is in Virgo, it can show that, you have a really strong inner critic. And so, doing better and always, getting it right can actually feel good, but then it's this never ending perfectionist cycle that you can get trapped in, and you don't even know it. um then the moon moves into Libra, right? Are you, Tammy, are you tracking, like, that's right, after Virgo comes Libra, because that's the equinox. So it's just, I'm just going in order of the zodiac. So at the end of Virgo season, we have, at the very beginning of Libra season, we have the fall equinox. So we're in Libra season right now because we just had the equinox. So any baby that was born today would have their sun in Libra and probably their moon in Capricorn. But we'd have to have the birth time. So anyway, the moon in Libra is, we appreciate beauty and harmony, and we like when everyone gets along, and doing one-on-one things with someone will feel really good. And then it moves into Scorpio, which is your natal moon sign. And that's where we want to get internal. We want to be able to do that deep dive in our psyche and get to the bottom of, like, what really is causing my irritability today. What's really, and so it's the digging down deep. And if we have a lot of things out in our life that are distracting us, we can get irritated, because the mood of the day is go within. So it's a good day to do those inner practices. Um, and I will say that, Tammy, like, that is part of you, but because you have other parts that are very social, so your Mercury's in a very social sign, it's not all of you. It's just part of you, right? The social part. I mean, you have a podcast, for crying out loud. Yeah, you're just curious, you love to learn. So after Scorpio comes Sagittarius, and that's, the sign where we come out of the dark and we can look on the bright side and say, I want to share information. We can say yes to things. Sag loves, like, a big party and just to get all dressed up and go out and do its thing. And then it moves into Capricorn. And that's, Capricorn is one of those points, right? So when the sun moves into Capricorn, that's the winter solstice. It's right after your birthday. It becomes Capricorn season. You were born at the end of Sagittarius season. And as we're recording this podcast today, the moon is in Capricorn, so that we can get grouchy, that our emotional body takes on a more serious tone, and we can be in the mood to get stuff done and make a list and cross things off. And then it moves into Aquarius. And again, Aquarius is an air sign. So we're in the mood to think about the future, and Aquarius likes to find its people and to really think, like, how could I make this world a better place? And then it moves into Pisces, and that's a very feeling sign. Pisces, when it's a Pisces moon, we can feel a lot, and it's a really good time to, like, move into those spiritual practices like prayer or contemplation, taking a bath, going to bed early, because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. We get to be reborn, in Aries season in the spring. So we want to be, letting go and, just taking very good care of ourselves when the moon is in Pisces. Same if you have a natal Pisces moon. And there we just did it. A really quick walk around the zodiac.
I love that, and, since I know very little about this, again, another dawning of, like, oh, like, the 12 signs of, like, the month. So there's a couple things happening, right? There's the 12 signs in the months, and then there's the
Yes.
the 30 days, like what's happening. So it's so interesting. And then you can hear, I hope people can really hear the parts, right? All the parts that are showing up, and they can really begin mapping their own system as they get to know, like if they look at their natal chart or they do some work with you, or just even just Google it, they
Yeah.
can really start hearing the parts. I mean, I think that's why I love the Enneagram, is like I can look at the Enneagram and I can be, oh, these are all my parts. I can really see, and it really validates. And then I can go in and I can really work
Yeah.
with my parts and then have more self energy. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Is there anything else you want to say?
Well, I have two ebooks that they could. One is What Does Your Sun Sign Say About Your Mothering? And then there's another one that really goes through what I just went through is so when the moon is in Gemini each month, how can I use that to help me with not only parenting my kid, but also taking good care of myself? Like what are my needs? What am I going to be in the mood for that day? So those are two ways that, free resources. And then they can book a reading on my website, luminaryparenting.com, or just follow me on Instagram at luminary parenting. And then I just give you the weather every day. You don't need to know anything. You just show up on Instagram. Oh, and then I also have a community an online community where I give a lot more, where people are like, your appetite is whet. You want more than what I can give on Instagram. And so it's just more of it's a really affordable way just to understand your chart and to just be a good parent to yourself, really.
Mm, I love it. Last question. If you weren't doing this, which keeps you incredibly busy, what would you do instead?
I, in my next life, I think I'm going to be a midwife. But that I can't take that on in this lifetime. I really would love to be present when babies take their first breath. I think it's such a magical
Mm,
time.
mhm.
And in this lifetime, yeah, I have a lot of parts that love information. So I think a really good balance would be to learn how to do jewelry design, because it's so creative and I love being creative, but I have parts that are like, are you kidding me? That's not going to pay. That you need to like work and, and learn more and contribute to the world. And so then those parts win. So maybe someday I will learn jewelry design and jewelry making and metal smithing. But yeah, that is my answer.
I love it. Maybe in a different season of life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, thank you so much. It's just been great to get to know you and learn about my parts.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It was great to be here.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, like, all the things. My book is available at your favorite independent bookstore or all the places books are available. You can also visit my website, tammysallenberger.com, where you can download a free meditation on getting to know your should parts. You know, there's parts of you who remind you of what you should be doing. They sound a bit critical at times. Yes, we all have them. You can follow me at IFS Tammy on Instagram and Twitter and the One Inside Facebook page. I'm so grateful for Jack Reardon, who created the new music. Jack is a graduate of Derek Scott's IFS Stepping Stone program. Thanks, Jack, for getting me. And to you, thanks for listening.